Hello everyone, this is Charles Laughlin from the Local Search Association and welcome to today's webinar. It's called SEO for SMBs, What Really Works. We're going to talk about a few things that are relevant for the SEO for SMB field. And one is this burning question of, is SEO a rich person's game? Is SEO for SMBs possible at modest budgets? And we're going to really get into some points of view on that issue. The next one is this whole notion of, is there a different approach to SEO for small versus large budgets, sort of the agency versus enterprise question. And then we're going to get very tactical with sort of some the recipe for SMB success with SEO, and we're going to dive into a number of different tactics there. And then we're going to end with key takeaways and then some Q&A. And regarding Q&A, we want to note that you can type your question into the chat panel throughout the webinar. We're going to hold questions to the end, but we'll get to your questions as much as we can. And one other note I wanted to mention was that this webinar is being recorded and it will be posted within 48 hours, and each of the panelists will be notified, excuse me, each of the participants will be notified once the webinar has been posted. So let's get right into it and let's introduce our speakers. Again, I'm Charles Laughlin from the LSA. I advise the LSA in a number of areas, including consulting and research. And we're also joined by Andrew Shotland, who's CEO of Local SEO Guide, a well-known authority on search engine optimization. Say hello, Andrew.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
There's Andrew. And also, again, as I noted before, Kelly Shelton and Matt Tennyson from Boostability. Gentlemen, welcome to the webinar.
Thanks, Charles. Great to be here.
All right. Okay, so getting right into it. Is SEO a rich person's game? The reason I sort of use this comment is I remember being on one of the thousands of industry conferences I've been to over the years, and there was a panel on SEO, and somebody made this comment, you know, SEO, it's a rich person's game. The idea that if you don't have a lot of budget, it's really, you're sort of fighting a losing battle. And there's you know, since then I've heard many, many different perspectives on that issue, and this quote sort of sums up a lot of that thinking, which is it's not so much about budget, it's about really getting the right mix of services for that budget and getting value for what you're investing. And so I'm wondering, Matt, what your perspective is on this issue, given, you know, Boostability's, you know, an SEO company that's focused on the small business market. How do you see this question?
Well, I think it's a matter of perception, and I think historically the perception is yes, it is a rich man's tool and available to enterprise businesses. However, I think that perception is starting to kind of correct itself a little bit into today's landscape, and where I truly feel that all the power that SEO brings to the table is there for small business to take advantage of. I think one of the key things that speaks to that is the adoption of small business usage for SEO. We have seen an increase in small business usage for SEO services consistently building over the last 5 years, meaning 5 years consistently, we have seen an increase of the percentage of small businesses, the number of small businesses utilizing SEO services. And you know what? That's not just true here in the United States. We find this to be the case now in more burgeoning markets like Germany, Amsterdam, Australia. We're finding the exact same statistics. Small business usage continues to be on the increase. So I do really feel that that what SEO can bring to the table on enterprise level is available in there at the small business end.
Now, Andrew, you deal with this question all the time. Sort of, how do you break down this notion of, you know, SEO being a big budget game? I mean, where do you see the breakdown? Where do you see the differences?
Well, I guess it can be a big budget game. You know, like any other marketing channel, the more you spend in it, presumably the more you're going to get out of it. But, you know, a lot of people like myself, we got started in SEO with no money, and anybody can really do it. But it's just like, I like to say, it's like unclogging your toilet. Like anyone can unclog their toilet if they really want to. It's just that it requires some focus, some experience unclogging a toilet, or the patience to learn how to unclog a toilet, and then spending time on it. So I guess it's maybe a rich man's game in that it requires time. But it's really, anybody can do it. It's just that we find that most, particularly small businesses, don't really want to focus on it. They don't want to spend the time to focus on it.
Okay.
So yeah, that's my opinion.
All right. So that sort of leads to the next sort of idea, which is, is there more than one way to do SEO? And I think that this gets to the heart of this conversation, and also there's a companion white paper that's going to be coming out later this month, sort of dovetailing with the topic of this webinar, where we talk about, are the approaches different for smaller versus larger budgets? Obviously, other than spending, I mean, are the tactics different, or is the approach different? And I want to get, Matt and you, or Kelly, you and Matt, get your perspective on this. We have a quote from the white paper from Matt here, which is, that the purpose of SEO is to build relevance and trust. So why don't you build on that thought a little bit and talk about sort of the differences between small budget or small business SEO and enterprise SEO?
Yeah, I mean, that's really it, Charles. The context behind this quote is just that, right? It's the differentiation between how SEO is done for small businesses versus the enterprise. And I alluded to that in the previous question with regard to the affordability of SEO, and that still plays, excuse me, even into this question. But at the end of the day, I think we can all agree that Google's main goal is to produce a good result to an inquiry, right? They want to service the consumer market well. And when someone asks a question about a good or service that they need, they're relying on Google to give a good answer. So the idea to build relevance and trust is the end of SEO. Now, let's take an example, though. Let's take, Charles, I've met you in person lots of times, and you're a nice, sensitive guy, and I think that
all right,
you well if you were to ever leave internet marketing. So let's say you own a florist shop, charlesflowers.com. So you have charlesflowers.com and you have Dell computers. Okay. Mm-hmm. End goal for an SEO campaign for each is to establish relevance and trust in various factors and in various ways around different product sets that they might offer, so that when a consumer searches for a good or service that each company provides, that Google's going to feel good about recommending them. However, the formula to get there is going to be entirely different. There's no way that you're going to utilize the same tactics or the same strategy to SEO Dell computers as you are charlesflowers.com. But at the end of the day, at the small business level, what the industry is looking for, what Google is looking for, quality links and quality content to establish that relevance and trust, so that Google feels good about recommending that website to its consumer base.
Yeah, and I would add to what Matt is saying is that some of the tactics that Dell can afford to do make great sense for Dell, but they don't make sense for a smaller budget where some of those tactics are out of reach. And so that's an important factor, is what can a small business afford to do consistently that will build the relevance and trust, that will build their presence online. And that's why the tactics are different. You might have a similar tactic in what you're doing, but one is just out of the reach of a small business, or they can't afford to have a link on CNN.com. They have to go to a tactic that makes sense for them, that still gets results, but it also falls within their ability to pay consistently for that work.
Yeah, I mean, to further that idea, right? I mean, at the end of the day, SEO should, for the small business owner, and I know for a fact that it is, it's about ROI. They want a return on that investment. Well, let's say that they were able to get a link on CNN.com. The cost of that link might be more than the ROI or that the return would ever cover, right? And so kudos to them for getting the link, but does it actually service and help their business grow? Can it provide enough customers to cover the cost? And the answer is, typically in that case, no.
All right. Andrew, would you add anything to that?
Well, I think to their point, right, the tactics that, or the scale of the tactics that, I presume we're talking about a local business now, we need to use are different than the scale of a Fortune 500 company website. And the good news is that the requirements are less, right? They don't need it. it's not as complicated, or the complication is of a different scale. So yeah, that's kind of my point of view on it.
All right, so we're going to move into the sort of the meat of the discussion, which is the idea of the rest of sort of building on what we just talked about, which is sort of different scale, different approach for SMBs. So what's the recipe? What's the set of tactics and the mix of tactics that companies like Boostability and others that serve the SMB market use to sort of achieve, ROI and achieve some and deliver some value to small businesses, at modest budgets? And maybe we're putting up here this quote about, link building, being a game that keeps getting harder with all the different updates from Google and all the greater emphasis on sort of real content and high quality content. So, your challenge has gotten greater over the years. But when we talk about SMBs, maybe it's a good place to sort of set up what are we talking about in terms of average spend, average budget size. When you're Matt or Kelly, you can jump in, sort of, just so the audience knows when we talk about small, what does small really mean, in your view?
From our experience, which is fairly vast in this space, yeah. I'll give you a range, and then I'll kind of give you what it averages out to be, right? The range for a typical SMB SEO spend, that we're dealing with is $200 to $2,500 a month. Mm-hmm. Okay, but you average that out, $400. $400 is right in the wheelhouse for a very typical local business SEO campaign.
Yeah, okay. And we're primarily when we talk to the business owner, we're primarily talking to the owner. So there's smaller businesses. Sometimes we're talking to a marketer that's part of their team, but in size, a small business has a few employees. They're you could call them mom and pop shops. They're the little guy that's in the marketplace that's really vital to the economy, but they're not there. But they've been established. They have a budget, but they're typically smaller in size.
And I will add one more addition to what Kelly's saying. The number of employees and the size, the physical size of the business isn't necessarily what is determining the budget. Certainly it can have some play, but budgets are determined by competition. So for instance, you can have a one-man legal firm, a lawyer that hangs a shingle and has a local law firm that has a much higher spend than a 15-man landscaping crew, because legal terms are more difficult and therefore more expensive to rank for than landscaping terms are in most markets. Right. So, I just wanted to draw that distinction that it's really the industry that's driving the cost and the budget. But by and large, from a local business standpoint, like we said, we're covering local business spends are between that $200 and $2,500 range with an average of about $400.
Great. Okay, that's helpful. Helps frame it. Okay, so let's move right into the recipe. Kelly, why don't you walk us through, or Kelly and Matt, and Andrew, certainly you can add your comments here. Sort of walk us through each of these and what it means and sort of how it's uniquely dealt with in the SMB space.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'll be happy to jump in on this. So, as you know, there's 9 tactics listed here, and there's probably several others that could be included in a typical small business SEO campaign. Some industry leaders or experts might look at this list and say, some of these tactics are considered old school, or I wouldn't recommend some of these tactics. And I would be the first to state that there are certain tactics on this list that you would never use just singularly as a standalone SEO strategy. But it's not about the individual tactic and what it brings to the table on its own. It's about what it does as part of a holistic campaign, right? Not unlike a sports team where you may have a LeBron James, but it's not like he can go out there as we saw and win the NBA championship by himself. He needs a supporting cast around him. He needs someone to feed him the ball, and he needs someone to make him look good. So that's what this is about, right? This is about building a diverse, natural linking profile, where you have some tactics that are not as potent and powerful as others, but when applied in the right amount and in the right percentages, bolster those tactics that are actually meant to really drive the organic value and rank. So it's really about the pairing, the combination, and the allocation of how we utilize these tactics that is the formula for success.
Yeah, and like any recipe, ingredients are important. And so I'll touch on each of these different ingredients, these different tactics and actions that we do for our customers. Certainly we begin with the health of the website. We look at the website, and we determine what their products are, what their services are. We do it's an in-depth analysis to find the keywords that make the most sense for the customer. And so when we're looking at keywords, we do in-depth research in their business, their industry, their region. You really need to make sure that you understand what products that they sell, what products they potentially rank for already. Do they have any pages that are ranking around that industry? And then you need to vet the keywords effectively. So you look at, are they competitively balanced? Is there an intent to buy with that keyword? So if someone's searching for how to fix a leaky faucet, there's an intent that there's an action they need to take versus how do I install a faucet. We look at cost for keywords. Can they afford to rank for that keyword, as Matt referenced earlier with the lawyer reference. And then we look at their current ranking. So selecting and finding the right keyword is really a very important component in this. Then you look at their code and the content on the website. Is their website speaking the language of Google? Is their schema? Is there proper titles? And is there good description? Is the content appropriate? Is it relevant to what they do and who they are? So analyzing and looking at their website in depth to make sure that, once you've identified a keyword or keyword group that you'd like them to rank for, make sure that content on that page is relevant and properly coded so it speaks the language of the search engines. And then we get into the off-site work, the promoting the business and the brand online, and building that authority and footprint for the customers all over the web. And the first and foremost is business profiles. Now this is Google My Business, this is Bing, this is Foursquare, Manta. There's definitely a core of business profiles out there where every business needs to be listed, local or not local. It's really helpful that your name, address, phone number, and your profile is listed in all of these major profile sites. And it's also important, best practice is to make sure that those profiles are thorough, that they're consistent with who you are and what you do, that there's reviews, that there's pictures. Everything needs to be consistent and accurate and thorough on the business profile as far as a general practice, best practice. Then we jump into directory submissions, and there are thousands of places where a business can be listed and can be found online. If you're a local business and you're a plumber, obviously you want to find local plumber directories and make sure that your business is listed there and found there. Often you'll be able to put in your website, and that serves as a link back to your website, and sometimes you can't. But getting listed and being found on those directories is a very valuable, helpful, useful tactic. Classifieds. This is something like Craigslist. Again, getting your business out there, expanding your footprint, having it listed everywhere is a good signal that you're an active business, that you're found everywhere.
So Kelly, are you actually on classifieds? Are you writing ads for the clients in some cases?
They're ads. I would call them more descriptions, but there is an ad angle to that. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Which brings up a good point, and we'll address this a little later in the presentation, but it needs to be personalized, and so we do a lot of research to really understand the business, their products and services, to make sure that those ads, those directories are a reflection of an accurate reflection of the business and what they do.
I'd like to add on those with looking at directory submissions and classifieds in particular. When I spoke before about the right allocation and the right amount, these are two particular tactics where data really helps to understand how to utilize these two things. There's a lot of there are a lot of solicitations that go on around SEO, and I get a ton all the time, right? As being involved with a company that provides SEO, I'll get solicitations that say, we can provide thousands of links at such and such cost. And it seems to be a way that a lot of companies go about wanting to sell SEO, is that we can give you hundreds and hundreds of links and make it completely affordable and this and that. And, it's absolutely true. You can go out and you can really, really go to town building out directory links and classified links at a really low cost. But again, you cannot build an entire campaign around that strategy, even though the hundreds of links might sound sexy. The types of links matter, and in this case, we do find value in these links, but we find value in these links at a certain amount alongside of other links that you see listed there, such as the articles and the blogs and so forth. So I did want to draw that distinction, that when we're talking about the right allocations and how to utilize the ingredients, that's what we're talking about, right? I mean, salt is a fantastic ingredient in almost any recipe that you're ever going to use. But if you put too much, it's going to sour the taste. Not enough, it's going to be bland. Same with directory submissions and classified links, right? You need just the right amount to make it taste right.
Yeah, that's a great analogy, and as long as it's natural, you're just naturally promoting the business and doing what they would do if they had the time and the expertise. So jumping into article engagement, this is sometimes called comment marketing. This is a valuable tactic that is important and helps the business join the conversation. It helps them to essentially how this works is they'll go to a relevant blog or article found online and they'll comment on it. We'll make a comment on that blog or article. In some cases, we're adding a link back to a website to let the in that actual comment of the blog or article. And there's some best practices here that are important. You want to make sure that those comments they provide value, that they're useful, that they respect all the other comments and authors that are there. It's got to be well written, on topic. Those are all important, transparent. Make sure that they know why we're making that comment, etc. But engaging in the conversation and participating in blog commenting is a great tactic. Can be a great tactic for a small business owner in particular.
Hey, Kelly, just quickly on that. Now, this particular tactic has been a little bit controversial, I think, because there's been some spammy practices around it, right? And sort of the best practices you're laying out are certainly about, making sure that comment is as anyone would make it, relevant to the conversation, adding some value, et cetera. How do you do that at some scale? Because, there's a fair amount of thought that has to go into doing this right.
Yeah, I think technology is key, because technology will help us find relevant sites where we should comment. And also will help. Then you have specialists. Then you have people that this is all they do, and so they will go in and they'll grab a comment where it needs to go, and they'll have all that kind of prep work done for them. And they have training on what makes a good comment and how to make it relevant. And they do a little research and they go in and post. And if you train someone, you have the systems in place, and it's technology supported, then you can do a lot of those, and they're still very relevant. They're useful. It's well written. But that kind of helps you have the scale that you need to make that individual tactic affordable, and so you can do multiple of those tactics for a small business in any given month.
And it's also about data too, Charles. So there are a lot of testing that goes into the utilization of a tactic like this. So we'll take a subset of accounts or keywords, and we'll apply commenting, or in this instance, article engagement, as we're calling it. And so if we do this many article engagement tasks, and we put them on this site for this industry and at this spend, what's the result? And then we'll go and test it a little bit differently, and then test it a little bit differently, and test it in different industries until we finally stumble on the exact formula for the utilization of this particular tactic to its best degree. It takes a lot of time and a lot of energy, and I believe that Andrew referenced earlier the the inability or the lack of desire for small business owners to really get that granular into an SEO campaign. But that's why there are experts in the industry, right? That's why there are researchers. And, you know, the beauty of data is that it doesn't lie, right? Results don't lie. When you test something and the result is positive over and over and over, ergo, that's a good thing to do. And furthermore, if it's validated by a Google update, meaning an update occurs and your rankings hold up, and now you feel really good about the results and around the data that you just tested and surmised was a positive thing. So can't overlook the aspect of data and research. And then Kelly's absolutely right. Then having the luxury of a technology platform that helps you with the application of what you find in that data, then you're just money. You're golden.
Right. So moving on, the next few get really much more into this idea of custom content. And Kelly, talk a little bit about these last three.
Yeah, so on-site blogging is important. It allows you to create content that answers questions, that's useful to a consumer. It's authoritative. It's a great tactic to have a blog and to be providing useful information. So we'll write those blogs. We'll do research. We'll work with the business owner to come up with, you know, a great blog. A lot of times they're top 10 lists, or they're answering a question. They're responding to FAQs. Mm-hmm. So custom blogs are important. Guest blogs are also important. When you're out there and you produce a great piece of content, you want to place it in a relevant blog. So again, if I'm in plumbing, I want to go out and I want to find a blog or a site that deals somewhat with plumbing, and write a great piece of content that's useful, informative, and helpful, and, you know, request to see if you can get that blog published on that particular website. And so there's step one is creating good content, and then step two is going out in the outreach that happens to help get that content published in a place that will create a link, will create authority coming back to their site. But the key, though, is that it's useful, that it's helpful. It has to be good content. And the same thing goes with articles. Articles, you have a little more flexibility from a relevance standpoint. Sometimes sometimes it's easier to have an article published on a lower trafficked site because it's not as competitive, but that's still relevant. It's still a good link. And so there's a lot that goes into that, but the basic best practice is that make sure that it's quality, make sure that it's relevant site, and then that outreach is important to get those posted. Some of those tactics take a little more time and cost a little bit more, but when you combine that one good guest blog post with dozens of these other tactics together on an ongoing basis, it really creates a powerful building that online presence and footprint in a natural way.
Great. So, okay, we're going to move into sort of the final stretch here with our key takeaways. And Kelly, why don't you, or Matt or Kelly, why don't you jump in here and sort of, this is to sort of summarize the point of view on, the SMB for SEO for SMBs and how it differs, and what it takes to really do this well. And hopefully the audience will get a few takeaways here that they can apply, whether they're selling it or actually producing SEO for SMBs.
Yeah, I think this is a great formula of how to deliver it, what to do. So we've talked about some of the tactics. So how do you go about implementing those tactics? What's the approach? One of the key things is this concept of less is more. It sounds pretty sexy to say, we're going to get you ranked for hundreds of keywords. And so from a sales perspective, a lot of times people will want to sell a number of keywords. But what we found is that what's really effective is that you target pages, you target keywords, so you're not diluting your online marketing efforts to hundreds of keywords. You're focused then on a handful that they could rank for. So it's quality over quantity. And typically we'll take an approach that, yes, we can help you rank for as many keywords as possible, but we're going to go after 2 right now, and we're going to target this page right now, and then we're going to expand to this other page and go after these. So that less is more approach is absolutely essential for small businesses, because you're on a limited budget. You need to make sure that your work is targeted, focused, and highly effective, and that's an approach that I think is critical for the small business marketplace.
I would add relevance to that as well, right? You want relevant keywords to rank for. Now, I'm an old guy, and before I was in internet marketing, I was in traditional media and print for a lot of years. And so I've used this analogy before because, in the print world, we would focus a lot on size, circulation, repetition, offer. Those were kind of, your scorecard for success and in print and distribution style of advertising. And, I could print up 100 flyers for you, I could print up 1 million flyers for you and distribute those. And maybe I'm going to send out 100 of them to a relevant audience, and I'm going to dump the rest of them in the lake. And they don't do a dang bit of good. It's the same with this. It's the same idea with this keyword selection that Kelly is talking about. We could rank you for dozens and dozens of keywords that no one searches for. But what good does that do for your business, right? So, yeah, truly, the relevance of the keywords is critical. And when you are dealing with relevant keywords, it will take budget to rank for, and that goes right to the heart of what Kelly is talking about. If you dilute the effort too much, then you're going to rank for nothing, except for stuff that you don't care about ranking for.
Right.
And then as we kind of go through this list, personalization is key, especially when you're dealing with scale. Each individual business wants to feel that they're heard, that they're equally represented, and they're not just a number. And so you need to go to great lengths to make sure that you understand who they are, their business, their marketplace, their products they care about most, so you can personalize the content you produce and personalize the service that you give them. It's very, very important. Budgeting effectively. This is really important because often we'll find that a small business owner is paying way too much they're over funding a campaign. And sometimes we'll find often that they're underfunding a campaign. So they may be spending money each month, but it's never going to get them to the first page. So in this analysis, you need to look at their market. You need to look at their competition. You need to look at what keywords they want to rank for. You need to look at what they can afford to pay consistently so that they can achieve those page one rankings. So budget is really important. And then consistency. A lot of times, we'll tell customers often that if you can only do this for 1 month, don't waste your money. This is something that will take time, and you need that consistency over time. So let's find a budget that you can afford to continue to do for at least 6 months so that you can get the results that you're looking for, because that consistency is an important signal to Google that you are a legit business, that you are your people like you online. And I think we've talked about balancing the balance of tactics fairly well. I think we've covered that it's not just one tactic you do over repeatedly. And I would just add that it needs to be natural tactics, something that a business would do. An SEO company should think of themselves as a marketing arm of that small business. What would they do to naturally promote their brand online and do that? And I also think we've talked about links and content. Google has confirmed again that those are the two big things that they look for, or two big ranking factors: links and content. Create and promote good quality content on the web, and that goes a lot. And there's wonderful, as Charles mentioned, there's these tactics and these concepts and principles in that white paper that he's producing really goes into a lot more detail, so you can get some specifics on this. And then crowdsourcing, this is something in technology. I'll let Matt talk to those 2 points just to kind of wrap up these takeaways, kind of how that plays into your ability to scale and still provide that personalized approach to a small business owner.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. The idea of the utilization of crowdsourcing is critical to provide scale and to control the quality. And I think it's the quality that I want to focus on, right? Well, quality and transparency, actually. So there's a lot of ways to provide scale. You can outsource work or contract work out, this and that, which, obviously crowdsourcing is a form of contracting. However, the utilization of the right crowd is really what it boils down to. So, there's again formulas for success, and there's good ways to do this, and there's bad ways to do this. But having a technology platform that enables that crowd to work as if they are indeed one of your own people is the key, right? Having a technology platform that literally walks the person in the crowd step by step through the exact process of what they need to do is the key. And then having the right personnel on the other end, editing, QAing, and generally overseeing the quality and reporting on the transparency of what that person is doing is the other part of it. So this all becomes tremendously difficult when you are dealing with tens of thousands of campaigns, and having something that allows you to kind of organize, collate, govern all of the work task distribution, govern the quality, monitor and audit the quality and the results of the campaign is really really is what's going to drive perfect combination of being able to deliver something at scale at the right cost, and yet something that's going to be quality enough that the consumers, not only is the consumer going to love it, but the search engines are going to love it too.
Hey, Matt, are there specific platforms or places to go to find the crowd that you could recommend?
I go to the mall.
That's a good place. The clipboard? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Charles, you know, that's a good question. I've got to be honest. I don't really know the answer to that question beyond my experience here at Boostability, and so I can speak to it from that standpoint. The way we utilize them, the way that we find the crowd is through advertising, right? We advertise various means. Facebook is one of the biggest ways that we attract writers in this instance. You know, writers are a lot of who we're using out in the crowd. But so we advertise for these folks, and we seek out and basically run them through a vetting process, very similar to how we would do an internal hiring process, right? It's almost an interview per se, but it's an interview through their work. So how to find the crowd? I believe that the challenge is not finding the crowd. The crowd is there. There's always going to be someone willing to do work that you want them to do. I believe the challenge is qualifying the crowd. And that's something that technology can really aid in, and that's something that process and time and learning, because we've taken a lot of learnings, and sometimes we've taken learnings with a slap upside the head, if you catch my meaning, right? The learnings are not always easy to digest. Sometimes they're painful, but time, experience, learning, and then having the right processes in place to qualify the crowd, I believe, is key.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I would add one thing there. When because you just go on and search, how do I find a writer, or how do I find someone that will create content or that will build links. You'll come up with a lot of results for that. But the key is to make sure that it's quality. The key is to make sure that you're vetting that you're auditing that you have a process in place. So we have hundreds of writers that write for us, but we have an in-depth editing process. So if you're going to do this, make sure you don't, because content quality is so important, you can't afford to put out bad content. So make sure you have an in-house editing group. You could outsource some writing, but make sure that's being vetted by a team. Same goes with if it's link building activities or other activities. You want to make sure that you're ensuring that you're not compromising the quality, that you have an internal kind of vetting process or team that does that.
Okay, we're going to end it there. Thank you to all who attended. Also look for our upcoming white paper on this very topic, where we'll add some more detail on this conversation. And again, and thanks to Andrew, Kelly, and Matt for joining us today. And that's it. Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.